Every name that comes up when we talk about the richest people alive today, none of them come close to this man. One of the wealthiest human beings who ever lived, ruled an empire most people couldn't find on a map. And at the height of his power, he accidentally destroyed an entire region's economy just by passing through it. His name was Mansa Musa, and most people have never heard of him. Before we get to the man himself, we need to talk about where he came from. Because most people, when they think of medieval power, think of Europe, knights, castles, the Pope. But in the 14th century, the Mali Empire was a force that made European kingdoms look like regional footnotes. Mali sat in West Africa, stretching from the Atlantic coast deep into the Sahara, a territory larger than Western Europe. It controlled the two things that ran the medieval economy: gold and salt. Gold from the mines of Bambouk and Boré, salt from the Saharan deposits at Tagaza. These weren't just commodities, they were literally the currencies of two continents. At its peak, Mali was producing roughly half of the Old World's gold supply, half of all the gold on Earth. The city of Timbuktu alone had a population of 100,000 people. It had universities, libraries, scholars came from across the Islamic world to study there. This is the empire Mansa Musa inherited in 1312. Musa came to power under strange circumstances. His predecessor, Abu Bakr II, had become obsessed with one question: what's on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean? This was 1311, nearly 200 years before Columbus. Abu Bakr outfitted an expedition of 2,000 boats and sailed west into the open ocean. He was never seen again. Musa, who had been left as deputy, became king. By all surviving accounts, he was extraordinarily devout, a Muslim who took his faith seriously. And as a Muslim ruler, he shared an obligation with every capable believer: the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca. Most rulers sent representatives. A few went themselves with modest caravans. Mansa Musa decided to go in a way that made it unmistakably clear exactly who he was. The preparations alone took years. The caravan that assembled was unlike anything recorded in history. 60,000 men, soldiers, scholars, officials, servants. His personal retinue included 12,000 servants, each dressed in silk brocade from Persia and Yemen. 80 camels, each carrying hundreds of pounds of gold dust. His senior wife, Inari Kante, traveling with her own retinue of 500 handmaidens. 500 heralds walked ahead of the procession, each one carrying a staff of solid gold. Every Friday, without exception, wherever the caravan stopped, Musa ordered a mosque to be built before they moved on. From Mali to Mecca, he left mosques standing in his wake like mile markers across the continent. The caravan consumed entire towns' worth of food as it passed through it, and Musa paid for all of it, pressing gold into the hands of merchants, locals, anyone who crossed his path, which is exactly where things started to go wrong.
When the caravan reached Cairo in 1324, the Egyptian sultan sent envoys to receive him. Musa spent 3 months in the city. He gave gold to the poor, he gave gold to officials, he bought goods at wildly inflated prices without negotiating. Why would he? For his entire life, running out of gold had never been a concept worth considering. By the time he left, he had pumped so much gold into the Egyptian economy that the value of the metal collapsed. Gold is only valuable because it's scarce. Musa made it unscarce, and the ripple effect spread across North Africa and the Middle East. Prices spiked. Merchants lost fortunes. The gold market in Cairo took over a decade to recover. An Arab historian named al-Makrizi wrote about it decades later, calling it one of the great economic disasters he had documented, caused entirely by one man's generosity. Musa eventually realized what he had done. On the way back from Mecca, he tried to correct it by deliberately borrowing gold back from Cairo's merchants at high interest rates, pulling some of the excess out of circulation. It barely helped. When Musa returned to Mali, he brought something back that arguably mattered more than all the gold he had spent: scholars, architects, and books. He had met the poet and architect Abu Ishaq al-Sahili in Mecca and brought him home to West Africa. Al-Sahili designed new mosques and palaces in Timbuktu and Gao in the Sudano-Sahelian style, some of which still stand today. Under Musa, Timbuktu became one of the great intellectual capitals of the world. The Sankor Madrasa housed up to 25,000 students. Its library contained hundreds of thousands of manuscripts. Scholars were working simultaneously on mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and Islamic law. Musa didn't just spend money, he built institutions. Mansa Musa died sometime around 1337. The exact date is still debated. After his death, the Mali Empire began a slow fracture, succession disputes, military pressure from neighboring kingdoms. By the late 1300s, the empire was weakening, and by the 1400s, it had been largely replaced by the Songhai Empire. With the empire went the memory. European mapmakers had noticed him. A 1375 Catalan map shows Musa seated on a golden throne, holding a golden orb, labeled as the richest ruler in Africa. But as Mali faded, so did the records. The Arabic sources survived, but went untranslated for centuries. The oral histories of West Africa kept parts of the story alive, but weren't taken seriously by Western historians for a long time. The result is that one of the wealthiest, most powerful human beings in the history of the world became a footnote, a trivia question. What's strange about Mansa Musa isn't the wealth. Wealth accumulates, empires, resources, trade routes. That part isn't surprising. What's strange is the scale of his obscurity. This was a man who brought the economy of an entire region to its knees by being too generous, who built universities that rivaled anything in Europe, who commanded a caravan so large that witnesses described it blocking out the horizon. And we barely know his name. It says something about whose histories get preserved, whose records get translated, whose stories get told. The Catalan mapmaker saw him, the Arab historians documented him, and then for centuries, the world mostly moved on. Mansa Musa didn't fade because he wasn't remarkable. He faded because the people who write history decided for a long time where remarkable was allowed to come from.